my first year of law school getting divorced. I don't recommend it. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. It was really difficult being in law school, seeing my ex-husband, or as we're going through this divorce, and he's incredibly charming and good looking and smart, and these other women that didn't know me were coming up to me saying, "Oh, I just went out with or I was just flirting with your husband or your ex-husband or whatever. I didn't know that was him." And then there I was with 2 little kids, feeling a little depressed and overwhelmed. And on the bright side, having those 2 little kids really just made me focus on law and what I was there for. So I got remarried the day after law school, actually, and had a few more kids. And throughout practicing law, it made it so much easier to have that ability to just kind of turn everything off and focus that I really had to develop in my first year of law school.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snod. It Rhymes Loud, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes Loud podcast, where we sit down and talk all things business. Today, we have another amazing guest in the podcast studio. We have Amy in the house. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here with you, Ryan.
Today, we're talking all things AI, law, your entire career path. Amy is a lawyer, but also has an expertise in AI, which we'll talk about, and kind of educating people about how to use AI and the legal side of it and all the things that go with it. So really excited to jump in the pod with you today.
Great. I'm excited to be here. I'm always happy to talk about law and AI.
Sure.
2 of my loves.
Well, we should probably throw the disclaimer in here now. You feel free. You're the lawyer, so you go ahead and throw it in there.
So just have to say this. Nothing that I say is intended to be legal advice. If you do have a legal issue or a legal question, make sure that you're talking to a lawyer about it. And there are certain timelines that you have to be aware of if you have a legal claim. So make sure that you don't just sit on a legal claim. So, talk to a lawyer. This is just I'm going to share my opinion, and I'm not creating any legal relationships here. No attorney-client relationships here.
Sure. No, I love it. And I think this will be a great episode to, one, learn about your path and all the stuff going on in AI, but also for people that have a business, like we'll talk about some of the things they can take away from the legal side of like when they should tap a lawyer for certain things and whatnot. So this will be a really good episode. I'm excited to talk with you.
Great.
So for the people that I always say, if you have a nosy Uber driver in a long, 45-minute drive, if someone asks you, who are you and what do you do? Like, what do you typically tell those people?
So I tell them that, actually, I try to avoid bringing up that I'm a lawyer right at first, because that tends to turn people off one way or the other. But I tell people that I am an AI consultant and that I help lawyers use AI in their businesses most effectively. Usually the conversation gets around to where I talk about that I am a lawyer, that I do practice law still, and that you can pretty much answer every legal question that gets asked to you by saying, it depends. So if you ask a lawyer a legal question and they say, it depends, don't be put off. That's really the answer to almost everything in the law.
Sure. No, and that same thing with marketing. People always say, "Oh, should we run Facebook ads?" I'm like, "Oh, it depends." Should we do Google? Nah, it depends. Like all those things. There's some things that are like, but to that point, well, did you read the fine print? So what areas of the law do you focus on now? I mean, with your legal practice, do you do like criminal defense? Do you do, like mergers and acquisitions? Like what area? I mean, there's so many areas of law. Like what areas do you focus in?
So I'm actually now I've just completely switched to doing AI consulting, but during my law practice, I did a lot of litigation. So when I was in law school, I was a single mom, and I thought, okay, I need to have a career that's going to be manageable with kids. So I thought I wanted to do estate planning, and that's what I had focused my whole law school time on, is estate planning. Of course, you have to take all the standard courses, but I thought, okay, I'm going to be this great estate planning lawyer. And I got out of school, and I started working for this firm that had a really strong litigation practice and a really strong estate planning practice. And they had promised me that I could do both because litigation sounded kind of fun. So it ended up that the litigation side just ended up, one of the partners there just gave me assignment after assignment. So I just got stuck in litigation. And after a while, I ended up leaving and going to a little boutique firm that does estate planning. And I realized after years of like, I finally felt like I reached my dream of being an estate planning lawyer. Then I realized, no, I love the fight. I love the litigation. So I only stayed there a couple years before I went back to litigation. So most of my career, I focused on contract, like complex commercial litigation. So lots of contracts, lots of businesses, lots of disputes over real property or things like that. I volunteered for like a few months for criminal defense, but I am not the person to ask about anything criminal. So it's all been on the civil side, and it's all been litigation. So when I talk about litigation, those are the lawyers that go into court to fight, and so much fun.
Sure.
That's what I love.
That's exciting. Well, and I think, and I went to Simpson College, and I had to take a whole year of business law as a part of my degree, and I had to go. I think it was I had to go to two court rooms and just observe. And my roommate and I went to like a 7 a.m. Like federal one downtown, like in the federal court office. Almost missed it because it was in like this weird room. But it was like, I can't remember the court case proceeding, but it was basically a Japanese-based company was being sued by an American-based company here in Iowa for something like they had equipment that was going across on ships. The Japanese company had like taken their equipment off the barge and kept it there.
Ooh,
and they were like, we need our stuff back. And obviously they weren't here to like fight it in person. So they had like a lawyer based locally that took care of it. So
nice.
It was just a weird situation. And my roommate fell asleep twice and he started snoring. So I was like elbowing him because there's no one else. It's like the lawyers, the judge, and us. That were the only people in there. So it was kind of a weird experience.
It's definitely a lot more stressful when you're the one doing the litigating than when you're sitting there watching it. So it can feel really boring to sit and watch a case, especially like if you're on the jury and it's a really technical issue. It can be super boring to just sit and listen to it. But I mean, being in there battling through hearings and trials, and that's a lot of fun. It's definitely, it's a great way to practice advocating for your clients. I mean, I guess practice isn't the right way to say it. Oh, now I feel like we just got to cut that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think
my headphone popped out, and so now I'm like, having a. Oh, there. Now it's back in.
There you go.
It was like there was a short or something, but. That was the way that I could fight. I couldn't fight with my family or whatever, so I would go fight with the opposing attorneys in court. And the great thing is, for the vast majority of attorneys, then you could walk out and be best friends outside of the courtroom, but still, there were a few who maybe took it personally, but just so much fun battling it out in court.
Isn't that such a weird relationship, though? Because yes. It's almost like you're putting on a performance. Like you go in, you put your briefcase on the desk and it's like go time. And then you can walk out and shake hands and be like, oh, I'm just doing my job. Like I'm representing my client as well as I can. I
feel like the best lawyers completely understand that. Like we're in this adversarial relationship, but we don't have to be adversaries. We can be opponents and then walk out and have a good relationship, a good experience. There were a couple of lawyers in my career that were just... One of them refused to shake my hand. Another one like chased me out. And that was pre-COVID, like, back when there was no reason not to shake my hand, but he was just bitter. And another lawyer like just chased me out of the courtroom. Not chased because I wasn't running, but just followed me out, like yelling at me because I had won and he felt like his client deserved to win. And it's interesting how people can let that take over their lives in a bad way, not in a good way. Mm-hmm. So no, I think it's great. To kind of give people context, I mean, I would love to keep going with this, but I think it'll help people to understand where you came from, kind of your like upbringing, your childhood and all that stuff, and like where you started versus where you are today. So let's like, where did Amy grow up? What was kind of the origin story of you? I actually grew up not incredibly far from Iowa in a place called Laramie, Wyoming. In Wyoming, there are literally 500,000 people in the whole state, back when I was born and now. Like, there's literally more cattle than people.
I was just there 3 weeks ago, and it's pretty barren.
It's pretty barren.
Lots of bison.
Especially because my dad was a college professor at the University of Wyoming. And so we were on the eastern side of Wyoming, where the west is beautiful, but the east, not nearly as pretty. And I was I am the fifth of 7 kids. And my mom always said she had 2 speeds, slow and off. So that gave me a lot of independence. I got to do whatever I wanted to do. And when I started off in college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I realized, as I was slogging through these math classes, I'm like, I don't have to do, like, I could do something different. I took a speech and debate class and ended up, like, the professors asked me to be on the speech and debate team. And then I started getting these awards and scholarship offers. And I was like, oh, it's a lot easier to talk than it is to, do math problems. So I switched over to wanting to go to law school, ended up going to law school after I finished my undergrad. And it was absolutely life-changing. I know law school is for a lot of people, but I ended up, I had gotten married and had 2 little kids. And when my youngest was 1 year old, I started law school. And my husband decided to go to law school too, because I was going to law school. He's brilliant, but I ended up that my first year of law school, getting divorced. And it was, I don't recommend it. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. If you're going to go to law school, like, do not get divorced in the middle of it, because especially your first year, it really sets the tone for your grades and for the rest of your law career. And it was really difficult being in law school, seeing my ex-husband, or as we're going through this divorce, and he's incredibly charming and good looking and smart, and these other women that didn't know me were coming up to me saying, oh, I just went out with I was just flirting with your husband or your ex-husband or whatever. I didn't know that was him. And then there I was with 2 little kids, feeling a little depressed and overwhelmed. And on the bright side, having those 2 little kids really just made me focus on law and what I was there for. I had a couple moments where I went to law school, and this is the case with most law schools, you have these semester-long classes, and you get 1 test at the end of the semester, and that's your grade for the whole entire class. And usually you have like 3 hours where you're just writing as fast as you can on 1 or 2 paragraphs that your professors are giving you a scenario, and then you have to discuss it and apply the law to the facts that they give you. And I sat down to take my first essay, my first exam it was civil procedure, and I looked at this piece of paper and I thought, I've been sitting in the wrong class for the last 3 months. Like, I had no clue what I was supposed to be talking about. Of course, I really hadn't sat in the wrong class. I just felt overwhelmed, and all these people are typing on their computers as fast as they can, answering the question. And I had to, like, really give a good hard think, like, do I want to finish this, or do I want to walk out and be done right now? And I thought, no, I'm not here to be done. I'm here to get a law degree, and I'm just going to do the best that I can. And ended up doing incredibly well on that exam, kind of surprisingly, and I absolutely loved law school. Like, it was definitely hard having, like, my daughter was teething the night before my final exams, and I got almost no sleep or whatever. But my kids just forced me to have a lot of balance in what I was doing. So I did not spend a ton of time studying. I had to find that balance and focus on school when I was in school and focus on them when I was not in school. And I think the gift that it gave me was really the ability to just focus on what I was doing right then and put everything I had into what I was doing right then so that I could just set it aside and go on to other things. And that ended up being huge in practicing law, especially we have 5 kids. And so I got remarried the day after law school, actually, and had a few more kids. And throughout practicing law, it made it so much easier to have that ability to just kind of turn everything off and focus that I really had to develop in my first year of law school.
That's a crazy story. How did you compartmentalize some of those feelings? Because I mean, it's not like your ex-husband was in a different industry. He's going to the same school. Like, how do you compartmentalize that and not just because so many people tuck tail in that situation and be like, I need to at least go to a new law school or find somewhere else to like. How did you do that?
I love that question. I did not do a good job of it. I did not do it well. I just didn't really know what else I was going to do. Didn't have the luxury of quitting. I thought, okay, I've got these 2 little kids, and he was not super excited to take care of those kids. His attitude was kind of, you're the one who wanted them, you take care of them. So I knew I had to support him, and there were so many times when it was so hard. I did not compartmentalize nearly as well as I wish I would have. Looking back now, I'm like, oh, I would have done this different and that different. But in the situation, you do what you have to do, and that's what I did. And ended up absolutely loving law school. It was so much fun having to. The demanding nature of it really just made me, I think, focus and just really helped me, like I said, be able to read those cases faster and get to what I needed to faster because I didn't have the time to spend. I can't remember the name of it. There's that one principle where whatever task you have will expand or contract to fit the amount of time that you have. And I had this much time, so my tasks were going to fit in that much time. And I guess when you have to, you just do it.
That's great. Well, and I know just other people that have been in kind of like, I would say more advanced degrees or things that require a ton of study. I know some people that just study 12 hours a day or I feel like they're overstudying. It's like, do you really need, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor, but I feel like some people want to over prepare so much that it almost is a detriment to them. There's one of my friends that did that where, stay up late and cram. And I'm like, how much are you actually going to retain? You might be able to regurgitate for that next 12 hours to a test and then you'll forget it. And like, if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, like you want to actually remember this, like actually know the material because if you don't thoroughly understand it, your client could be on the stand and be getting a life sentence because you don't understand what you're remembering,
I love what you said about understanding it because I did take some time to teach at business law at a local university at Grandview University and absolutely loved it. The students were so fun, so phenomenal. And I told them on pretty much every exam, it's completely open book. I don't care what resource you use because what I'm going to give you is going to test your ability to put skills into action instead of what you actually know about the material. Because if you can understand how to use that knowledge, like you were talking about, not just memorizing. I didn't want rote memorization. I wanted, can you put yourself into the situation? Can you advocate for yourself? Can you advocate for a client? And most of these people did not want to go to law school. A few did. I've stayed in contact, or some have stayed in contact with me, and it's really fun to hear from students and have them ask me to write them a letter of recommendation for law school when they weren't planning on law school or whatever. But I think you are exactly right. You can maybe over prepare. I think it's hard to over prepare, and I for sure would have loved to have had more time to study, but I didn't have more time to study. And you still have to compete against those people that are getting that studying time. And so, like I said, it just really helped me hone in on that focus. And I think that made all the difference.
Do you feel like Hollywood glamorizes how
crazy
it is?
Sure.
Like, what's your comparison to that? Because I'm a huge movie guy and I'm like, visually, that's all I'm seeing is just that stuff. How does that compare to the reality of what law school is? Because you say that was the best time ever. Like
It was.
most people
It
be
was so
like,
good.
worst years of my life. Like what was it? What made it that way? And what was different than the Hollywood portrayal of it?
Oh, it's not nearly as glamorous. I mean, my husband and I, a few years ago, thought we would sit down and watch Suits for a minute, and practicing law is nothing like that, or very little like that, I should say. It's not nearly as glamorous. It's not nearly as, suddenly they have, all this stuff that they need right when they needed it, or one thing that makes me laugh about movies or TV shows that portray law is how fast it seems like everything happens. But one lawsuit that I was involved in lasted 8 years. I mean, it is one lawsuit. And clients, my clients' biggest frustration has usually been because lawsuits are emotional when you're one of the parties to that lawsuit. And it can be just so emotionally difficult, and people would want it to happen faster. Like, why is this not going through faster? And the courts move at the speed that the courts move at. Like you can be going as fast as you can, and it can still take years. So I would say that's the biggest difference, is that it is not just some, packed into 30 minutes of, looks like a week or two. No, this can be years of lawsuits. So when I say it was the best years of my life, I definitely felt like I had a purpose that I was working towards really hard. And I think that made it some of the best years of my life, just focusing on and I love practicing law too, just focusing on something else, someone else, and trying to get the best situation, the best outcome for them is incredibly compelling to me. I love that.
Do you feel like, of all your siblings and everything, do you think people could have told, like, oh, she would have been a lawyer? Or was it like kind of a surprise to people?
No,
okay.
They definitely knew.
Well, were you really good at arguing and debating as a child? And
I can't say that I was good at it, but I was very loud at it. I think the first time I went to that, because I was not planning on taking speech or debate. I didn't do it in high school. And when I did it in college, and I remember, I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm calling up my mom going, guess what? I just got a first place trophy. And she literally said to me, well, you finally got an award for talking so much. I mean, it was no surprise to her that I was very just kind of loud, outspoken, willing to share my opinion. But clearly not all lawyers are like that. And you don't have to be that to be an excellent lawyer. I'm just very loud, kind of in your face. I was also the first out of my siblings to get a bachelor's degree. And so it wasn't surprising to anybody that I was going to go on and do a little bit more, because I loved school. I knew I wanted to do more.
Well, it always makes me laugh. Like this last weekend was Thanksgiving, and I was home, and my mom had my old report cards. She's like, I'm going to throw these out, but if you want to look at whatever. And every single one was, knows his stuff, talks too much. He's outspoken.
That would be me.
Speaking out of turn, doesn't raise his hand enough, like all those things. And it's kind of funny because it's like you'd kind of see a glimpse into the future of it. But I think there's different levels of lawyers too. Like obviously there's trial lawyers that go to court, but then there's other ones that are just contractual lawyers or M&A lawyers or whatever. And there's different types that everybody needs those. Like, right. If you're a contract lawyer, like I hope that person's thorough and type A, and you want that person not to be like Harvey Specter and flip through something like, yeah, I understand that. Let's go to court. It's like, no, you got to know what you're talking about. So
right. Definitely. And there are just so many excellent lawyers who are a little more quiet, a little more reserved, just worked for me. I will say that I feel like one of the things I've noticed in my life is that my mouth will get me in trouble. Like I'm all about the, like you kind of said, I talk too much maybe, but it was one of the perks of being a lawyer. Then I get to talk a lot.
Sure. Well, and I guess another piece of that too is now that you're like, when you got into the practice, I know a lot of people, depending on the industry that you're in law, I've heard it can be soul sucking if you're on that
can
side
be.
where you're representing
Definitely.
dirtbags, people that are guilty, but it's your job to defend them. What was kind of your experience in some of those situations if you were on the other side of justice, if you will, and you had to still defend your people, or if you knew, man, they're getting boiled on this case, but I'm going to do as well as I can to try to support them.
So that made me think of a couple of things. Since I didn't do really criminal law, I didn't have that aspect of like either prosecuting or defending somebody who was a child abuser or somebody who was, a serial rapist or whatever. So thankfully, I didn't have that element of soul sucking, but I feel like it was very soul sucking for me in some ways because I felt very strongly for my clients. And I always wanted to do the absolute best that I could for my clients, regardless of what their situation was, whether we were fighting over a building that was theoretically in the wrong place, or whether we were fighting over, a multi-million-dollar company. I would kind of just eat, sleep, and breathe that case or those cases, because you're never just working on one case at a time. And that felt kind of soul-sucking to me, because there were times where for more than a year, I would get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep and just be so worried and so stressed about that case and my clients. And then one of the other thoughts that I had was where you said, when you see a situation where you're just stuck and you just have to do the best that you can, that is, I have had that experience a number of times. In fact, as an associate, I got thrown into litigating really quickly. I didn't start off just interviewing clients like a lot of people will, or writing legal memos. I got to do that, but I got to go into court pretty fast because of the law firm that I was at. And so this managing partner decided that he was a senior partner. One of the founders of the firm decided, hey, this is a huge client and I'm going to lose this case. And so I don't want to be the one to go lose this case. I'm going to give it to my associate, and she has to go deal with this.
What a nice coworker.
Right? I could tell some really interesting stories about that boss. But anyway, I sat there and thought about it and thought, who deserves to win? Who deserves to, like, what is the best that I can do for my client? Because that's all I can do. And ended up actually winning that case, winning the whole thing for our clients. Because if you're really willing to like put everything you can into that case, you can find ways to be successful for your client where it looked like we were going to lose. What I ended up saying to the judge that was really kind of the pivotal point in that case was, Your Honor, the other party, yeah, they have been wronged and they have a right to some benefit. They have a right to be made whole, but not by my client. And it was my nice way of saying, hey, their lawyer committed malpractice. That's on them. That's not on my client. And it's so easy for a judge who's a human, who's like just sitting there looking at the situation, wanting to do the best that they can, and see a situation where my client had a lot of property and a lot of money and then is getting divorced from this woman, and they were actually fighting over the business. And did that woman have a right to a lot of the assets? Yeah. But had her attorneys done the best job for her? No. So that's on them. That's not on my client. And I think it a lot of times it just comes down to your perspective, which has actually helped me a lot in business too, because if you can kind of take yourself out of the subjective situation and just look at things a little more objectively, and then ask yourself, okay, what's the way that I can turn this into a success for me or for my clients or for my business or whatever. It's that perspective and just looking for a way to turn any difficult situation into a benefit that's really going to make most situations turn out successful. Even if it's a failure, it's still successful if you learned something from it, if you were able to gain or improve or, increase your knowledge or whatever. So even really difficult situations, they end up making the best stories.
Sure. Well, and through this experience of obviously you're doing, law school and your associate side of it before you kind of get into your own practice, how has being a lawyer made you a better negotiator in other parts of life, whether as a parent, as a spouse, if the hospital calls with a bogus bill and you got to talk that thing down on the phone, like how has this profession made you better at negotiating?
It's definitely affected me. I don't know that that's always for good. Every once in a while, family members will say to me, okay, just stop being a lawyer for a minute and let's just talk for a minute, because they feel like maybe I'm being a little too much of a lawyer. But it definitely, I feel like it has definitely shaped my personality. I was out to a late night girls' night out with a bunch of my friends, and there was a problem that somebody had with their meal, and then the restaurant was still charging her for that meal.
Oh,
Everybody
gosh.
instantly looks at me and says, Amy, go take care of it. And so I was like, of course, you bet. Absolutely. That's kind of fun to me. And I went and talked to the people and said, this is what happened. And don't you think it would be fair if this? So I don't know that it's necessarily made me a better negotiator, but one thing that I feel like practicing law has definitely done for me is helped me look at both sides of everything. There are always two sides to a story. And I started off every case knowing that what my client said was true, but knowing I needed to double check on it. Never just completely because they were telling me their perception of the situation. And there are always two sides to any situation. And if you can help the person that you are going up against or opposing or even trying to work with in coming up with a contract that you can agree on or a business deal that you can agree on, if you look at things from that side, from the other side, it just helps you, number one, overcome those obstacles better. And number two, maybe change your position a little bit if you need to. So
Sure. I think that's the intelligent way to go about life. I mean, especially we just got done with our political cycle. You see kind of all the critters come out of the trees, if you will. But I think it just really shows people's knowledge to hear someone's side of whatever it is, if it's politics or whatever, anything.
You're exactly right.
Well, why do you feel that? And I think that's the one thing that I do well in that world is like, I just like to hear people out of like,
Nice.
okay, you have this opinion on something, like tell me why. And then I'll hear it out. And then it's like, okay, well, I listen to you. Here's how I think about this differently. And maybe we can learn something from each other and at least get perspective. Because even if you don't I'm not telling you to, vote this way or change your religion or do whatever. It's like any of these like core beliefs that you're not going to change somebody, but maybe just understand like, well, why did that person think that way? You can learn a lot about that.
Oh, I completely agree with you. You're exactly right. If you're listening to them, you are in a much better place to learn and even to figure things out that are going to benefit you if you are spending all the time listening to them. So I completely agree with you. It's something we probably don't do enough, especially in political situations.
Sure.
That's a tough one, especially we just got done with Thanksgiving not that long ago.
It's like every 4 years, this is like the worst time. It's like
Yes,
Thanksgiving right around
exactly.
the presidential election time. It's always a
Definitely.
difficult time, but
Definitely.
I think it's a piece though that you can take with anything. It's like as a parent, your kid comes home from school and, oh, so and so wronged me. And you'll have some parents that go after the school or they go after the kid. And like you said, they didn't double check that the kid was even in the right or that they were stating facts. They just assume that, and it shows, it rears its head because then it comes out in the wash and it's like, well, the parent didn't double check and now you got egg on your face and that looks stupid. It just goes to show like the impulsive agreeance of anything. Yeah. You got to double check, Yeah,
you're exactly right. And I really think that way with politics, it's amazing how people will find out that you believe something or don't believe something, whether it's politics or sports or religion, whatever, and they'll instantly then their mind is made up. This is how that person is, and now we can't be friends anymore or whatever. But so much better if you're listening, like you said, and trying to get what can I get from this? Looking at the whole situation, what's on both sides, because that's what's going to get you to where you want to be, really.
Sure. Well, and as a negotiator, if you know if you can predict what the other attorney is going to fight for or against, you can almost use that information against them.
Definitely. Exactly. You have to be able to see both sides to be the most effective for your side, in my opinion. Because if you don't know what they're going to say, if you don't know what their strongest position, their strongest arguments are, or their strongest evidence, or their strongest whatever, if you're not aware of that, you stand to be blindsided. You stand to be, and I think that's true with your clients. You probably dealt with this a lot too in business, because I know you've been really successful in business. You have to understand, like, what are their objections going to be to this situation, or what is the pain point that they have that they're trying to solve, and how can I help them with that? And that's really, I feel like that's benefited me a lot in law and in business, is looking at, okay, what's the pain that other person is feeling, and how can I be the answer to that pain in their life?
That's great. So we get to the end of graduation. You started law school in a divorce, figuring out, do I want to do this? You end law school, newly married and kind of ready for the next chapter in your life. What was kind of your first role out of college or out of law school, excuse me, and what was that like in your legal practice?
It was like, do we have to go back there? It was horrible. It was so hard because I literally, and this is my stupid practical nature, I got married the day after I graduated from law school. Why? Because then it was going to be easier for everybody to be together. They didn't have to come for a graduation and then a marriage. So I got married the day after I graduated. And it was really hard starting off a new marriage with kids and practicing. And I think that law schools have gotten so much better about this in the 25 years since I finished law school, but they did not do a great job of helping us really know how to practice law. So they would teach us, how to advocate for yourself maybe, or some of the basic principles of law. And then when you get to a law firm, especially the law firm that I was at, in the situation that I was at, it was a hellish trial by fire. And looking back, I'm so thankful for that, because it really forced me to learn very quickly. But wow, was it painful in the meantime, because I was really struggling to figure out how do you do this? How do you do that? And not getting a ton of like hand holding doing that, not getting a lot of guidance or suggestions or advice. And that's a fast way to learn, but wow, is that a painful way to learn? I remember talking to an opposing attorney, and they were saying, why in the world am I talking to you about this? I can see your bar number. I can see how long you've been practicing law, roughly. I'm not going to talk to you about this. I need to talk to somebody who's been at your firm longer. And I was like, no, you got me. Like this is what I've been assigned to do. So let's talk about this. And it forced me to, I think, be a little bit more creative. But boy, that first job out of law school, that was painful, super painful. And I think that's probably true with a lot of new jobs. There's that learning curve. Like when you got into photography, when you got into starting your own business, like I'm sure you felt some kind of a learning curve, or some kind of a pain, learned by painful experiences.
Sure.
What was your most difficult experience, or what was your most... the most difficult experiences teach you the most, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, in my case, I worked in agency for 5 years before I started my own company. And I always encourage anyone that's about to go off, like so many people leave college and start a business. And I'm like, don't do that. Go, like in your case, like if you just started your own legal practice out of school, it would have been very difficult, because you don't
do that. And it scares me. That would be really hard. I'm always shocked when people do that.
Because I get like, oh, the vision is own my own practice and stuff. But it's like, yeah, but you need to acquire the skills and knowledge, and like you said, learn fast on someone else's dime and figure out what it actually takes to be successful. So that was my biggest insight from working in agency for 5 years, was like seeing the industry, seeing the dollar amounts companies would pay for projects and what it takes, and the shortcomings, the good stuff, the bad stuff. Like in my case, it was a lot of the industry would be, a client would hire an agency that would hire the production company. So they're paying quadruple what they should to just hire more cooks in the kitchen, and everyone has opinions where I'm like, why not just be Santa's workshop, get
Yeah.
the order from the child's mouth, so to speak. And when the Christmas season we're in, like you get the gift idea. Okay, make the gift. Here's your gift. Instead of like, we have a service that collects all the stuff that the kids want for Christmas. And then we'll, it's one of those deals. So that was the insight for me. And there are a bunch of other things which would go on for hours of all the things I learned. But I think that's a big piece in your first step out of college is like, go see how the industry works now before you try to reinvent it. Like understand the rules before you try to rewrite them.
Very smart. So smart. You can't always do that. I mean, there's always going to be somewhat of a learning curve, but you're exactly right. That was a very smart way to do it for you.
Well, here comes the cross-examination. So I like it though. That's great.
I never wanted to start my own business. You said, that's kind of the dream. I was happy in a lot of ways working for other people. I was happy not taking that risk and had not intended to start my own law practice. Ended up doing it, I guess, sort of out of necessity. My older daughter, went through some really rough times mentally and emotionally and physically, and was hospitalized. And my husband and I both had demanding careers, and one of us needed to stay home and take care of her. And my job was not amenable to that at all. And we decided that out of the two of us, it would be me that stopped work to take care of her. So I was planning on just being done practicing law, which felt incredibly hard, but your kid comes first, and she definitely came first. So I stopped practicing law, and within a few months, I just had clients asking me, please take my case, which sounds so stupid, but it was a huge blessing. I was like, okay, I guess I will. Started my own law firm, and it ended up being a really good thing. I ended up seeing all the benefits of having your own business, which I hadn't really felt before.
Sure. Well, and it's interesting because so many people go in probably with a clear vision, like, oh, I want to go like be a lawyer and then start like a political career and go that route, or I want to be a judge, or I want to be a in-house corporate attorney and just kind of be not coasting, but it's like, I just want to have like a comfortable career in that way or climb that way. What was your vision for it when you first went in?
I wanted to be a judge. That was my ultimate goal, was to be a judge. I thought it sounded really fun to kind of like be in charge of a courtroom. And, in the sphere of their own courtroom, judges have a ton of power. They get to make a lot of decisions. And what they say just kind of goes. And so I knew even before I started law school, I wanted to practice law for a while and become a judge. And as I practiced law, I knew that was what I wanted. And that has never happened. And actually, I'm good with that now. I look back and think about being a judge now, and I think, I've had a number of judges, a number of friends who have become judges called me and asked me for advice about a certain case, or they need a little bit more information or my thoughts on a certain situation or a certain case. And I just think, I'm so thankful that I don't have to do that I'm not the one making those decisions. Mm-hmm. So
no, that's great.
It's crazy the way life sometimes takes you.
Sure.
How you didn't anticipate it to go, but that's, I guess, part of the fun is seeing where the ride takes you.
Sure. So you leave the workforce and are promptly followed with emails and phone calls from clients that want you to keep working. What was that first year or two like when you started your law firm? Was it just kind of a part-time thing? Did your daughter end up getting better and you could go back to this, and that was kind of your fork in the road, was like, do I go back to the corporate side or do I go in with my own practice full speed ahead?
I did have that at some point where I had to decide. I've had a couple of those crossroads where I've had to decide, okay, what do I want to do next? Where do I want to go with this next? And for quite a while, it was part-time, and that was perfect because that's what I needed to do with my daughter, and that's what I could do with my daughter and my other kids. And it was a lot of fun. I loved that things weren't I wasn't putting out fires that other people had set all the time. So during my career before I started my own practice, one morning I walked into the office and I'm taking off my jacket and turning on my computer and whatever. And the partner walks in and says, oh, don't you have a hearing this morning? And I said, what are you talking about? No, I don't have a hearing this morning. And he was like, no, I'm pretty sure I asked you to do this case. I'm like, no, you really didn't. And he said, oh, well, I need you to go do this case. Go talk to the legal assistant and see what time the hearing is. I literally I checked with her. It was starting in like half an hour. I was half an hour away from court. So she's telling me about the case as I'm driving to court. And there were just so many, like I didn't have to do that once I started my own firm. I knew what all my deadlines were. I wasn't cleaning up after anybody else's mess. I was cleaning up after my mess or my client's mess or avoiding messes altogether. And there is so much power in that. That is such a beautiful thing. I decided. And of course, it was still a lot of work. Like there was still a lot of times where there were late nights that, I had to work because somebody needed me, during the day or I hadn't gotten everything done during the day or whatever. But there is just so much, I'm sure you know this, so much beauty to having your own business. Like, would you ever trade that now and go back to working for someone, or are you happy that you started your own business?
Sure. No, I think it's interesting, your perspective of it, because you learn things along the way and you sacrifice things too. Because
definitely,
okay, if you have a firm bringing in high value cases, if you're getting, if you're a partner, you'd get a percentage of the profits, or if your billable hours are through the roof, like great stable income. But like you said, you're sacrificing the hours, or you're always behind the 8 ball. For me, like I feel like I'm a kid in the playground where like I get to just play in the sandbox and do what I want to do and not have to like, if I want to do more projects around this, like I can go try and get more of those or build a portfolio around that. So I think that was the big draw for me in that regard. But I think in your industry too, it's interesting because there's all these like, not bureaucracy, but it's so rigid and structured where the people, the older or not older, but the more tenured attorneys are going to kind of just like, you're their intern for a better lack of a term, even though you're like, I passed the bar. I'm a licensed attorney. Like treat me with some respect. It's like, well, you need to be practicing for a decade for anyone to care. And it's like, well, who hurt you 10 years ago before you got a decade of experience? One of those deals. Like, what was that experience like for you going through this as a woman in the industry and just in this ego-driven kind of machine that just pumps the stuff up that way?
There definitely are so many more women in law and so many more female partners than there were when I first started. And I by no means started off at a bad point. I graduated from law school in 2000. So it was, things were great for women in 2000. I did, however, at times get called a paralegal or get judges sometimes would be like, where's the attorney? And I'm like, it's me. I'm the attorney. And you're exactly right there. I think that this is going away more now. My perception is that it is. Maybe people who are just starting out don't feel this way, but it seems like there's not as much kind of like bullying at law firms as there used to be. And I saw something on LinkedIn just a couple of days ago that said, we need to stop the bullying at law firms. You need to treat everyone well. So maybe it's not going away, but in my perception, there's more respect for people as they're starting off. But I definitely had that thought with certain lawyers that I was working with and essentially working for and thinking, who treated you so badly that you feel the need to treat me this way? Because we're all here working on the same goal. We're all just trying to get to the same place. So I guess those experiences are what make you think, or what's made me think, I want to make sure I'm never treating somebody like that. I want to make sure that I am valuing people for where they're at, regardless of what they're doing, regardless of what their knowledge is or their background is or their level of experience or whatever. We're all just here doing the best we can.
Sure. Well, and I think there's an innate, obviously a value on what you do. Like if you go into court and screw this up, somebody could be going to jail or getting fined massively.
Right. And every day I thought, oh my goodness, that was partly why I couldn't sleep, because I was always thinking, wow, if I do something wrong, like we could lose our house. I could get sued and we could lose our house despite the fact that, the firm has malpractice insurance on me or whatever. It definitely felt like there are not a lot of jobs that you go to every day where someone is actively trying to prove you wrong. And that's definitely how I feel practicing law or felt practicing law, that there was always pushback on whatever I was doing. And again, I kind of loved that because I didn't stay at that estate planning firm very long. I ended up going back to litigation because I do love that challenge. But boy, that challenge can be, I think you said soul sucking earlier. I think that's a good way to say it. That challenge can be kind of soul sucking. Sure.
No, I think it's a good perspective there. Kind of talking a little bit about, we'll definitely get into the AI stuff in a second, but at what point did you start kind of going down that road or exploring AI platforms? Because I think the legal industry is probably one that is a laggard in technology.
I think you're right. Yep.
Innovation, because it's been around since forever. How did you kind of start dabbling in AI and start exploring that stuff for yourself?
That's a great. I think you're exactly right. That's a great question. I think your perception is exactly right that lawyers are very risk averse. And I think you want your lawyer to be risk averse. You do not want your lawyer out there, jumping on the latest fad of whatever. But even now, it surprises me how hesitant lawyers can be to actually use AI. What started me off was a couple of years ago, I ended up just trying it because someone had suggested it would be helpful for my practice if I tried some AI, and ended up just absolutely loving it and just falling down immediately into this rabbit hole of I've got to figure out how this works and how to make this work and how to use this the most effectively, because I was always looking for ways to make my job a little easier and a little more efficient when I was practicing law. In litigation, you bill in 6-minute increments, and my whole life I've thought in 6-minute increments. Like you make one phone call and you're billing 0.1 hours, and that's 6 minutes. And so time was very, very valuable. And I think that's what really drew me to AI, is that huge amount of time savings that you can find in it. You definitely have to be careful about how you're using it. But I think that that lawyers, because of our ethical duties and because of our, we have these extra, professional responsibilities that we have to make sure we're competent in whatever we're doing. And it can feel pretty intimidating day in and day out to think, okay, am I competent enough to be doing this? A lot of times, yeah, you feel like you are, but anytime you step out of your comfort area, you have to be asking yourself, am I competent to do this? And that's a huge burden that you can be dragging along. So I do love helping lawyers figure out ways to make their law practice a lot more efficient, and their jobs a lot easier, because it can be a lot that you're, a lot of pressure that you're feeling, knowing that you've got someone's livelihood depending on you and how well you do in court, or how well you represent them, or how well you negotiate, or whatever.
This episode is sponsored by Jacobson & Company, LLP, a CPA firm based in the Des Moines metro area. We actually had Grant, one of their partners, on the podcast as a guest, and they were gracious enough to sponsor today's show. Grant and his team are my personal accountants that help both my wife and I with our accounting, tax prep, and business planning for both of our businesses and for our family. And we brag on them often and have sent a ton of people their way over the years, which makes this ad really easy to endorse since I've had them on retainer for a couple of years now. Their team is always keeping me up to date on the latest litigation changes, tax law changes, and other things that I have no time and, frankly, no interest in keeping up with all by myself. The year before I started working with Grant, I think my tax bill was over $30,000, and I had like 2 months to come up with that money. I was not sleeping. I was working myself ragged, trying to come up with the cash so the IRS didn't come after me. That's when I realized I needed a great CPA to keep me out of the hot water. After meeting with him and making some changes, I got a $10,000 refund the following year just by getting educated on how taxes work and leaning into their knowledge base. A good CPA is an invaluable resource for any small business out there. They offer everything from QuickBooks management all the way up to fractional CFO type services, depending on how big your business is. And their staff is really responsive and answer any and all stupid questions that I have every single month. Supporting the sponsors that support this show allows this podcast to continue to be free for you and that you can enjoy each and every week. If you're needing a new CPA for your personal tax prep, or you're growing a business and need a well-versed accountant in your corner, make sure to check them out at jacobsoncpa.net and tell them that you came from the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Now, let's get back to the conversation. And we'll definitely get into that here in a second, but I want to take a pause in the middle here and we'll do the lightning round.
Oh, no.
So you've been dreading
pressure.
this for days. I know.
The pressure.
So for people that don't listen often, we're going to ask you some random questions. It could be law related, could be AI related, it could be random stuff. You just don't know. I'm trying to break it up a little bit here. First question will come right out of the gate here. Can you name 3 LLMs?
You mean just the LLM, like the name of the company?
Yep. So learning language models, if you can name like AI learning language models.
Oh, sure. Of course.
So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm using industry jargon, which I should not be doing.
No, you are more than welcome to use. So the funny thing is, and I know this is supposed to be the lightning round, so I'll talk really fast and answer this question really quickly.
Go quickly.
It's so funny. I was preparing a CLE, a continuing legal education class for lawyers, and I was talking about LLMs, and I was asking ChatGPT, as I love to do, like, what would be a good definition of an LLM for lawyers? And it instantly started giving me all this information on a master's of law degree. And so when you said LLM, I was thinking, are we talking large language models or are we talking a master's of law degree? So context is everything here.
Yes.
Yes, I can name a number of different LLMs, ChatGPT and Gemini and Llama and I can tell you the companies behind them too. Harvey and Spellbook, and yeah, I can tell you a bunch of them.
Sure. I know one that stuck out was Claude, I believe.
I love Claude. I love it that Claude always says, "Good morning, Amy. How are you?" And I'm like, "Claude, I'm good. How are you?" It's like a conversation with a good friend.
Sure. I love it. Well, I expected 4. You gave me like 5 or 6. That's great. I mean, you're exceeding expectations. It's good. Really quick, 3 risks that lawyers run and 3 rewards that lawyers run of using AI in their business.
3 risks are confidentiality. I think that's the biggest one that lawyers are worried about. They're worried that we have the highest duties of confidentiality, and any good lawyer is going to respect that and take that very, very seriously. And lawyers are worried that they're going to be risking their client's confidentiality. So that's the first one. The second one is that some technological something just goes wrong and all of a sudden you don't have any of your evidence, any of your documents, any of your motions that you've written. And so just that overarching fear of technology. And the third kind of like risk that I would say lawyers experience is just a lack of knowing how to do it or a lack of being competent in it quickly enough, because we literally have to be competent in anything that we're doing, including the technology that we're using. So those are the 3 fears, the 3 rewards of using AI for lawyers. Being a lot faster, having more time to do other things, getting a head start. Sometimes you sit down to write a motion and or a response to a motion. Actually, a response is easier. You're sitting down to write a motion or draft a complaint or draft an appellate brief, and your mind just kind of just goes. So one of the rewards is it's a good starting place. It's a good double check, I'm saying starting place first. Like it's a good creative place to start drafting. And I feel like if I look at something, I can almost always make it better. So it's a good starting place. And the third one is, and this is one of the ways I love to use AI, is that once I've written something, sometimes I'm a little married to it. I feel like, oh, this is so good. I've written this so well. And you feed it into an LLM and it gives you this list of suggestions and your flow wasn't very good and you need a transition here. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what I wrote wasn't, the perfect piece of writing that I thought it was. There are so many ways I can use AI to improve it. So that's the third benefit.
No, I love those. I've even heard people in corporate, like they write a really bitchy email and they'll be like, give it to an LLM and say, make this politer or more
That's
nice.
True. That's
so
I do that sometimes. I will write something and then I'll say, make this more friendly, because I don't always mean my tone to come off as harsh.
Sure. No, I love it. Favorite place you've ever traveled? You just said you just got back from Turks and Caicos a couple weeks ago. We did get back from
Turks and Caicos, but I think my favorite place is probably a toss-up between Prague in the Czech Republic. So beautiful. This medieval area. I mean, it's just beautiful. You just walk along these cobblestone streets. And I went there by myself. And Istanbul I went to by myself. And that was so different. It wasn't as magical maybe as Prague, but Istanbul was just so different. We lived for a while in India, in southern India. And so that was about as different from my experience in the U.S. as possible. But my favorite place really probably would have to be Prague.
That's awesome. What were you in South India for? How long were you there for? I'm going to break my lightning round rules.
I followed a man there.
Oh, okay.
I actually still practiced law when I was there. I just had to. It was kind of nice because we were literally 12 hours apart, and so they could get. My firm would send me something and say, okay, please draft a motion for this. And I would hurry and draft it. And so then when they woke up in the morning, there was this motion all written, but we were there for work.
Very cool. Very cool. I've never been to India before, so that'd be a cool one. Then our another question here is your proudest moment as a lawyer.
My proudest moment as a lawyer is the one that I already covered, and it was that one where the partner literally gave me a case because he was going to lose it, and I ended up winning. And did I get enough credit for that? Absolutely not. So
we've talked about it twice here. We got to make up for lost time.
Exactly.
The last one here is you go, I go on ice cream flavors. So okay. I'll start cookies and cream,
chocolate,
Rocky Road,
vanilla,
Neapolitan,
strawberry.
Brownie,
mint chocolate chip,
cotton candy,
butter pecan,
butterscotch. This is
chocolate Wait, can we say like moose tracks?
Sure, moose tracks is fine.
Moose tracks.
This is the point where I forget everything that's been said before.
Right? Me too.
Did we say strawberry?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well then I lose then.
That's an easy way to end that.
Yeah. No, that was fun though.
I liked your lightning round a lot better than I thought I was going to. Thank you. That was actually fun.
Some are I was like, oh no, I'm using like the language model thing. I'm like, maybe she doesn't use different LLMs. I'm like, maybe just one.
Totally
I'm like,
use
I don't know.
a ton of LLMs. That was just funny that was your first question, and I'm thinking the law side or the AI side.
Sure. Well, the applications are so interesting to me because so many people are so against it because it's going to take our jobs and it's going to. Kids are going to plagiarize their degrees because they can't write an essay and all these different things. What's kind of the landscape in the law industry right now? You mentioned they're laggards in the space, but what's kind of the overarching when you talk to attorneys about AI? What's the first thing they typically say or their biggest hesitation or reason that they are, I don't know about that AI thing?
It varies so much. I think that lawyers are people who love a lot of control. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but lawyers may or may not be a little controlling. And I think that lack of control is at the heart of almost every fear that I see from lawyers. But it does go back a lot to confidentiality. Lawyers are just so worried. We just have that requirement to be so careful with our clients' information, and that level of duty that we have makes people so hesitant to use AI.
Sure. Well, and I know you had mentioned before we started rolling that you're starting a new company you just filed the paperwork for. So it's helping people with the AI stuff. So talk about that a little bit. What is this? Oh,
I love talking about AI, and AI and law is like my dream space. So I am helping lawyers use AI in their law firms really effectively and really efficiently and still ethically. So my new company is called Lexara Consulting, and I loved AI so much, but I didn't want to completely give up law. And I felt like I understand the pain points that lawyers have, and I want to be able to help them with that, be more efficient and more effective in their law practice. So I am doing everything from helping lawyers decide which AI tools to use. There are different benefits to different AI tools. You can get a tool that's going to help you with your AI for your time entry, or you can get a tool that's going to help with every aspect of your law practice. So depending on a firm's goals and their budget, I can help with that, all the way to doing things like data governance. So helping keep data safe and helping have plans to test and monitor not only AI systems, but also just data governance in general. So it's been really fun to expand into this and be able to talk to lawyers about what their concerns are and what they wish would be better in their job, and then be able to help them make their job more satisfying, more interesting, more effective.
Sure. Well, and as you're doing this, like delivering of the services, is it like more consulting? Is it speaking? Are you writing a book? All the above? Like what's kind of the...
I haven't started writing a book yet, but it is consulting and it is speaking. So I've taught a couple of CLEs about it. I'm actually writing some more CLEs. So it's mostly consulting, but also just some teaching.
Sure. Well, with such a fast evolving space, I feel like doing a book would be really a waste of effort, because the second you'd publish it, everything would be outdated because it's so fast moving.
I do worry about that. You mentioned that we just came back from a cruise to the Turks and Caicos. My husband read a book that was, 500-600 pages about AI. And it's interesting to see how much that it was like the start of time to AI, and how AI fits in to our communication systems and our models of language and civilization. And you're exactly right. Anything other than a book kind of like that is going to be outdated really fast.
Sure.
It's amazing how even just trying to put together CLEs, I'm thinking this changes so quickly, within a month, within a week. Like, what am I going to do that's going to be of the most valuable to people over the long term?
Well, and the case studies are different. I mean, it's such a general thing. It's like when the internet came out, the internet, like now people couldn't live without it. Like I wouldn't have any idea how to get around, like maps, what the one feature on my phone where I'm like, if my phone dies and I'm like traveling, I'm like, well, I can't board my plane. I can't call an Uber when I get there. I can't ask my wife to come pick me up from the airport. Like I'd almost rather lose my wallet than my phone, because then I could like call the people. I need a new passport or a driver's license. Like if you're just without it, like it's hard. So
you're exactly right. And I think that's what lawyers have a hard time keeping in mind also. I love that you said, the internet was new and email was new, and there was this big worry. Is it okay if we use the internet for our clients' information? And is it okay if we use the cloud for our clients' information or whatever? And every time we've been able to come through that challenge without, too many problems. So I feel like AI is for sure here to stay. And now the goal is just using it effectively and efficiently and ethically, and not should we use it or should we not use it?
Sure.
Everybody should use it.
Because I know the first like case applications that we're seeing, not law cases, but like use cases, we're seeing a lot of people use it similar to Google search, right? It's a text prompt and you get information back. Where are you seeing kind of where this will go in terms of other uses other than just information-based or application-based or writing-based? Like what areas do you see where this could evolve as time goes on, or produce different things than just like what a Google search would produce?
That's such a great question, and a really hard question to answer well. I definitely, with the amount of study that I've done, I have some ideas of where I think AI will go, but do I know for sure? Definitely not. Of course, AI has been around for decades. This, generative AI, that piece of it has just sped everything up so quickly. And like you said, you can use it for something really simple like a search, but that's a lot of resources for just something that you could do with a Google search. But it is so much more than that. For example, my family all went out of town for a while, or for a week, a month or two ago. And I thought, I'm just going to put wainscoting in my bedroom just for something to do to entertain myself. in the evenings where I would have been doing stuff with them, making them dinner or whatever. So I told ChatGPT, here are the dimensions of my wall. Here's about how big I want the frames. Here's how big my trim is. And it just in seconds did all this math that would have taken me so long to do. So it really is an absolutely beautiful thing and so great to use for so many different situations. But how I hope we use AI, I know like you said, there are so many people who are so worried that AI is going to take over our lives and that AI can, in fact, in the book Nexus, it talked about how in this one trial, an AI tool was able to, or an LLM was able to decide how it could beat a CAPTCHA, the CAPTCHAs that decide whether you're a human or not. Mm-hmm. It figured out a way to fool a CAPTCHA and did it in a very sneaky and kind of underhanded way. And there are so many people who worry about us anthropomorphizing AI and saying, oh, it's, we shouldn't say that it can think or whatever. But then you see something like that and it feels like it can think. I hope, though, that rather than worrying about it destroying our lives, taking over everything, I hope that we look at ways that it's going to benefit our lives. So one of the things that I love is agentics, where you can have your agent go and contact your doctor's office and set up an appointment for you, check with your calendar, see, yep, that's going to work out well for me, make the appointment, put it on your calendar, give you travel time, just things that end up taking so long in your day that could be so much faster with an AI tool. And that was a brief example, but it's amazing how quickly, if we set up AI agents, how quickly they could take care of things for us. You asked where the future is. I know that the owner of Bumble has the idea that agents are going to go date other agents, and then they're going to go back to their respective humans and say, yeah, you should actually go out on a date with this person, or no, you shouldn't go out on a date with this person. And that seems a little silly, but at the same time, if that saves you time and makes your quality of life better and you don't have to go through an awkward dinner or coffee with someone, I guess I see benefit in that too. So I don't know exactly where the future is, but I know there's so much potential.
Sure. I always think of it like in my industry, the way I'm using it, there's a bunch of different ways, but one is like ideation, like concept ideation, where, hey, I'm an expert in marketing. I want to do 30 posts on social media in the next month. Here's my website. Here's my subject matter. Write me a spreadsheet of topics I could talk about. And like, okay, half might be good, maybe 25%. But that gets the ball rolling in your brain.
Exactly.
You can start thinking of things. Or I've written video scripts for large clients for their like video campaigns of like, I would have manually written this and like, okay, well, write me a recruiting video script that's a minute and a half. Here's the job posting link. Here's the requirements they want. It's in a male tone voice, 8th grade reading level. Go. And it like 99% perfect. I change a little bit.
There's
but
so
it's
much
like,
beauty in that. And of course you never, like you can't take the human out of the loop for all of those things, but what a great way to use it.
Right. So the ideation's fun. For me, it's the visual side. Like my industry complains a lot about there's going to be no need for video producers because it can be all video related. But I'm like, yeah, but a lot of our clients, like, okay, Coca-Cola did an AI ad recently, which is all over the news, but they also have iconic like polar bears and Christmas and movie theater. Like they have things that are tied to their brand where like a normal company still needs their CEO on camera. Right. You can't just like spit that out of an AI generator tool. And then the last thing that I mention a lot is like the Photoshop AI generated tools are so nice because now it's like I don't have to manually cut out a person. You can just hit remove the background, the subject's removed from the background, or do this or that. It speeds the like mundane tasks.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I feel like we should be using AI for, is not to cut people out, but just to cut out the boring parts. I wish there was a way to get, Claude to wash my dishes at night, and there isn't, unfortunately, but
I think Tesla's got a robot they're building, so you can get one of those. So.
Sounds good. I need to get on that waiting list. But I love that that there are so many ways that we can use it to make our lives a lot easier. And you're finding those ways. That's perfect.
Sure. Well, in your case, do you see any big concerns of like they always call it the Terminator situation where the the
The
LLMs becomes
supremacy, the AI supremacy.
yeah, they become so strong and knowledgeable that they don't need us anymore, type of thing.
Is it possible? Absolutely. Do I think it's happening anytime soon? No. I still think that, humans have made it this long. There's just something unique about the human brain and our abilities. And I'm not super worried about the supremacy, AI completely taking over. But I don't know. It's kind of fun to watch movies like that anyway. So who knows?
Sure. Well, and I think the other piece of this too is the trying to find the balance between when to use it, where to use it.
Yes.
As a lawyer, do you think there should be more regulation and laws around use cases, when to use, like,
I'm so glad you asked that, because there are so many judges and bar associations that think, and bodies that think there should be more rules on how lawyers should use AI. I feel like, nope, our professional rules have it covered. If you are responsible for what you are sending out to that court, and so if you choose to have an AI write it all and you don't look at it, that's on you. I don't think we need more laws for the legal profession using AI, but I do think very strongly that we need some laws. We need one law in the United States that is going to cover AI for the whole country, because we've got these little patchwork laws. Tennessee's got this law, and Colorado's got this law, and Utah's got this law. And California, of course, when they, pass a law, it can have a big impact because of their huge population. But I think we're in jeopardy of falling behind a little bit by not coming up with a law kind of like the EU's AI Act. I really like that AI Act because it feels pretty straightforward and understands that there are different levels of risk associated with different AI systems, and makes the rules match those different levels of risk. So I definitely feel like we need a big federal law. I don't necessarily feel like I absolutely think we do not need more regulation for the legal profession.
Sure. Well, I think it's common sense regulation, right? Like,
you would think.
But like, especially image and video, you talk about like deep fake technology and some of these things where you could have a political figure that's not saying things that's being broadcast out there
And that's happened.
and confusing
Exactly.
people.
Yep.
Or images that are, a tabloid image that's AI created that shows, I mean, it could be as stupid tongue in cheek as like J-Lo's back with Ben Affleck, God forbid, but it could be, it could be a sex scandal thing that could
more consequential.
Yeah, it could slander someone's name or throw something. Like, there's so many things, like bad use cases. I think that's what scares people. But then there's also good cases of like, here's my grocery budget for the week. Here's the types of food nutrients that I need, this amount of protein or this calorie per day. My goal is to do this. Write me a grocery list that'll fit in that.
So many amazing ways.
Yeah.
So many amazing ways to use it.
Which reminds me, I need to get groceries. I should probably do that later today and write that out there.
I did that. So one of my least favorite things is coming up with menus. And so I said, okay, give me a menu for the month and here's what I want to focus on. And then give me a grocery list and what I should buy each week. And it's amazing. I love that.
I should probably do that. Now, I've heard so many people say they've done it because it's like, it's impossible to get groceries in this economy, but I can give it to ChatGPT, say, here's my budget, and they'll tell you what you can buy. So it's kind of cool to see that.
Definitely.
In terms of the business stuff, I know we mentioned like a lot of people that listen to this show are business owners or entrepreneurs.
I love that.
You're the first lawyer on the show on 67 episodes. Some of the things that I think it would be helpful to the audience to hear would be more on what are the most common mistakes that you see when business owners come to you, or things that end up in court? What are some of the most common mistakes that business owners make that end up getting a situation escalated to a court case?
So it's almost always someone thinks they're covering all their bases and they just haven't taken all the steps they need to, or they've tried to write their own contract, or they've I feel like people writing their own contracts just keeps litigation attorneys in business. I think as long as you are setting up your business the way that you should set it, the way that you want to set it up. For example, do you want to be a sole proprietor? Do you want to be an LLC? Are you a partnership? some really, and you can find so much great information on that online. Setting up your business as whatever format you want it to be in, like an LLC, and then making sure that you are getting a business permit and making sure that the name you want to use isn't being used by somebody else, and making sure that you're okay in your homeowners association or in your complex where you're living. I just had a friend who called me because I knew she was starting this business, and I had warned her about checking with it was a homeowners association, and she was going to be having a lot more cars come to her house, and the homeowners association was stopping her from running that business out of her home because
I
she
hate HOAs with a passion.
Right?
Why do they
so
exist?
So many people do. So many people
Why
do.
do they exist?
Right. And there are some good reasons, but we don't need, but the bottom line is if you, so a couple of cautions that I would give is, number one, decide what form of business you're using. Make sure that you apply for like your business permit. Make sure that you're paying your taxes. Definitely talk to a tax person. Another one that I would strongly recommend is, I lost it. I lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. If you're going to be doing business with a significant other or a friend or even a relative, make sure that you have your agreement written out. It does not lessen your relationship at all. It does not mean that you trust each other less or that you think you're going to break up or whatever. But I cannot tell you how many cases I have litigated where people just started this business and they knew everything was going to be fine because they were friends, and so they didn't need a written agreement, or they just wrote out a little bit, or they thought they had the same idea and they didn't. Even just buying a house with another person without having an agreement in a situation where they're not married, or but especially starting a business with another person, it's so important to make sure that you are writing out your understanding and having just some sort of formal agreement. My two of my brothers started a business together. And when I found out, the first thing I said was, please let me write you a contract, because it's not worth your relationship to have a problem down the road. So that's my strongest caution that I would give anyone, is have an agreement with the people you're working with, a written agreement where you've talked through all the situations. Don't just assume it's going to be okay, or we'll figure it out when we make it big, or whatever. Figure it out before.
Sure. No, I love that. And I think that's a piece where I try to think about, like in my business, like I took a year of business law. So like we drafted up contracts. We learned those things. Obviously, I know going to a lawyer would be nicer in some of those situations. In some of those, like, what circumstances or situations do you think is a good time to tap a lawyer in? Like probably like when you're creating a business would be one.
So just for something like creating an LLC, yeah, you don't need a lawyer for that. You can easily do that yourself and file the paperwork and pay the $50 to the Iowa Secretary of State, or if you're in a different state, whatever state you're in. Setting that up is easy. The default is that you're going to be a sole proprietor, so that's not hard. But where I do think it might make sense to involve a lawyer is just when you're both investing, or when multiple people, more than one person, is investing money into a business. I think it's a good idea to have a lawyer even just look over your agreement, or maybe draft your agreement. And you can ask an AI tool to help do that. That's not the worst thing in the world to do, but after having used AI for a couple of years now in law applications, it's definitely used most effectively when lawyers who know what they're doing are using AI. So there are some traps if you just try to say, okay, Claude, draft a contract for me, or okay, ChatGPT, here are my terms, I need this contract. You do have to be cautious about that. So especially if you're risking any kind of big assets, any larger amounts of money, or if you're putting your house up as collateral or something like that, I would say definitely talk to a lawyer.
Sure. No, that's great. And I think it's important too, because I've been in business for 8 years now, and I've worked with a lot of legal teams for some large clients that I'll send them my contract, and they'll send it back with red ink all over it. And
I've been guilty of that.
Yes, which is good because then I take notes. I'm like, well, I should probably update this obviously they're gonna advocate for on the behalf of the client because they're the in-house counsel, but then I'm like, oh, I should probably put something in there about copyright, or I should put something in there about
right. I love that you're thinking about that. I love that you are taking what you can from that because we have a property a condo that our son and daughter-in-law were living in, and then they moved, and so we decided to rent it out. And I was hiring a property management company, and I said, I just want to see the contract that you send out to the prospective tenants. And he showed it to me. He sent it over to me, and I literally. Oh, there wasn't red ink, but there were so many changes, and I'm like, you can't do this because that's against the law, and here you need to say this, and you've got duplicates here. And he took it in such good grace and literally just changed the contract. And I was not writing it for my benefit. I was fixing it so that it would be a more easily read contract that was beneficial to the property management company and to the tenant and to me, but. He could have easily just said, pound sand. Like I don't need your stupid revision. So I love that you're making the most of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the piece too is clarity is super important, right?
Clarity is so hard for people to see what they can't see a lot of times. So
sure. Well, if you go to court and it's like, well, that says that you get this and I get this, but it's not clear on here, then it's all thrown out. Like the contract's null and void if it's not clear, That
is why it's so valuable to just have even one meeting with the lawyer or have them look over your contract or draft you a simple contract, because in your minds, you think you agree, you think it makes sense, you think you both completely understand, and then something happens and you're trying to go back to court proving your position and it's not nearly as clear as you thought it was.
Sure. No, that's great. In terms of some of the other questions that I have, I know we had most common legal mistakes. We already covered that. Any advice to business owners that are trying to just make sure they've got their ducks in a row on the legal side to just avoid any huge issues before they become issues down the road?
So Iowa has this amazing part of the government that's all about helping small businesses. And they have so many resources there that you do not have to pay for. So I would strongly recommend for anybody who's a small business owner going to the, now I can't remember the exact name of it, the Small Business Association, the Economic Development. Anyway, going to that entity and just using those resources because they have so many resources that are so helpful. And not every state does that. Iowa's is amazing. Iowa's is admirable for the amount of resources that they give to small business owners. So if you're starting a business, I would definitely say start there.
Sure. No, I love it. I think we covered everything today. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I had so much fun, Ryan. And your lightning round, not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. This was great.
We just talked a little faster is all we had to do.
I know, right?
So
thank you so much.
Sure. Well, if people are curious about you, or maybe they might have some legal work for you, if you're still doing that stuff outside of the AI consulting, where can they learn more about your law firm and hear more about you personally?
So I'm on LinkedIn as Amy Swaner. That's SWANER. And my company is Lexara, LEXARA Consulting.com. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions while also avoiding a attorney-client relationship. But I am willing to answer any questions or any if I can point you in the right direction, I am so happy to do that because I'm very passionate about helping people start their businesses. If you want, you can just give your URL to your website so then you're not putting your phone number or your email out there. But it's just lexaraconsulting.com. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll definitely put all your information in the notes below. And you're the first official attorney on the podcast. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ryan. Awesome. Well, if you guys made it this far, you guys know what to do. If you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, give us a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Check us out on social media for clips from every episode that we have, and tune in for next week's interview. My name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and you're listening to the Rhymes with Odd podcast. I'm out. Peace.
Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snod Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snodmedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.